Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Open Door Show from Property CEO. Now, my name is Colin Smith, and I'm a planning consultant. And I work very closely with Property CEO, and I have the honour and privilege of presenting today's show. Now, it's great to have you with us today, and over the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of small-scale property development. And always, we are talking to some of the movers and the shakers out there who can give us the inside track on what's happening in the world of property. We'll also be shining the spotlight on any areas that we think will be a good opportunity for you, but also the important changes that we have to deal with in the development realm. So, what are we up to on today's show? Well, we've got a very special guest today. Today's special guest is Mike Sandhu, Director of SC Architecture, and they're based near Winchester. Now, Mike and I have worked together very closely over maybe even 2 years now, helping property CEO students realise their projects. Hi, Mike. How you doing?
How you doing, Colin? All good, thank you.
Yeah, can you see me all right? Yeah,
Yeah.
good, good. You wouldn't think that we're recording this live, would you? But it's quite good. Right. Well, we're going to be talking about a couple of things today. One of them is the dreaded biodiversity net gain, or as we call it, BNG. That's got nothing to do with a big friendly giant at all. It's anything but friendly, quite honestly. So there's a big changes in the planning system, and it's called BNG. And then also, Mike is going to be telling us a little bit about things that will actually affect the way that we carry out our developments, in particular in building control, health and safety, and things like that. And I believe that comes under the overall banner of principal designer. Okay, right. So we're going to talk a little bit about biodiversity just to start off with, if that's okay with you. So BNG, all right, this big monster that's been rumbling towards us for quite some time now. So, Mike, in your experience, can you just tell us what you think biodiversity net gain? What on earth is it? What is it all about?
So biodiversity net gain is all about enhancing the biodiversity of your developments.
Okay, so
In
why
short,
do we need that?
well, create a better environment.
Okay.
Ultimately, so as well as pretty buildings and nice buildings, the local authorities, government are now looking at our environment as well.
Do you think that developers, especially the large scale developers, tend to be damaging our environment much more than they should do?
Not more than they should be. They've been doing a lot of landscaping and
Sure.
greenscape, all part of their development anyway. So it's now just honing in on the smaller developers,
Yeah.
and that's what BNG is really for now.
Yeah. So at Property CEO, we do tend to really steer our students towards commercial to residential conversions. So we're taking existing buildings and brownfield land, that's previously developed land, and we tend to be using those much more. Do you think that will be easier for us to cope with biodiversity?
So under permitted development, the building's already there, the biodiversity is already there.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about it. This is going to be aimed mainly at new builds, anything from 1 to 9 units upwards.
Right. So, how exactly will we do this? How do we put together this biodiversity net gain? Is it in the form of a survey? How does it actually work in reality?
So in reality, the clients will need to appoint an ecologist. And the idea is the ecologist surveys the existing site as it is, sees our drawings of what we're proposing to put on there, and then comes up with an enhancement plan to try and get 10% better than what was there. Like the absolute minimum is 10%. This isn't going to be achievable on every site. So there will be options to buy credits from companies. I'm aware that there's some companies in the planning portal, there's already people on there advertising to sell credits. So ultimately you could look at it as another tax if you can't achieve the 10% on your site.
Yet another tax, eh? So it makes the developer's life a little bit more trickier, doesn't it? So you did mention the size of the development. So on smaller sites,
Yeah.
I'm presuming we're talking minor developments, which are usually, I think I'm right in saying 9 houses or flats or less. So once you hit 10 units, you become a major development. I'm presuming that on minor developments, you might be able to do this in-house, do you think? Or do you think you always need to have a specialist ecologist to help us?
From our experience today, we've had to get an ecologist involved.
Okay.
So an ecologist is going to become part of the design team. Like, before it was only in areas where you have bats and special areas. But I think now you will have to have an ecologist on board.
Okay. And I have looked it up myself. I mean, as a planning consultant, this is something which it's been coming towards us for quite some time now. Major developments have been needed to deal with BNG since the beginning of the year. And it's only been fairly recently, in the last few weeks or so, whereby minor developments need to deal with it. So just to recap then, on a small scale, and bearing in mind that propertyCEO is really for small scale developers, we're looking at dwellings of between 1 and 9. We're looking at an area of the site. I believe it's 1 hectare maximum. I believe that is.
That's
And
right.
is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so it's not all doom and gloom then. It's one of those things that we'll all get used to in the fullness of time, and we'll be able to sort of deal with it, more, in a more sort of professional and streamlined way, I expect. But right now, we're probably all sort of fumbling around in the dark, thinking, how on earth do we deal with all of this?
I think so. You're right there, Colin. I think a lot of people, because it's so new, are unaware of how this is going to impact their developments at this stage. But I think it will become the norm, and it's part of creating better environments for us all ultimately.
Yeah. So ultimately, it is a good thing, but a bit of a faff right now. That's basically it. So with all this going on, and we've got a few other changes as well that we need to deal with. Will the local authority, how will the planning authority actually control that you are in fact doing what you're saying to do? Sometimes on your planning permissions, you have conditions put on your permission. So is that the same sort of thing here? Will the council be able to control you through conditions?
Probably. So ecology is one of those things that never gets conditioned. So, if you get a phase 1 bat report done, if you have bats, ecology, they've always won the phase 2 report as well. So ecology never gets conditioned. It always has to be part of the application. So this is almost going to be a requirement that you have to submit with your application before it gets registered. Regarding actually enforcing this will be a planning condition. So like all other planning conditions, I don't think there's going to be a formal discharge for this, but I think currently ecologists will be out there looking to make sure that developers are actually doing what they're saying they're going to be doing.
So this is a bit of a growth area then for all new budding ecologists out there. This is an opportunity to actually grow their businesses, I would have thought. But anyway, so really, just in simple terms, do you think it's just simply a case of preserving our trees and hedges wherever we can, and maybe adding bat boxes and bird boxes, that sort of thing? That might be a bit of a simplistic point of view, but just for our viewers, do you actually think that that is likely to be, the way forward, enhancing the ecology on the site in that way?
Yeah, that's probably the simplest way to look at it. Mixed species, native species. Ultimately, landscape architects will get involved in this, bringing in native stuff. Yeah, I think that, in short, that is the crux of it, really, Colin.
Right. Okay. So another question then, if you don't mind. I know I'm getting a bit complicated on this one, but you did mention something about credits, and certain companies are actually almost like selling credits. Can you explain briefly what that means?
So if you can't achieve the biodiversity improvement or enhancements on your own site, you can actually buy credits where companies have set up, and they're enhancing landscape and area, and you're literally contributing to that enhancement.
Oh, I see. Okay, so yet another growth area, a way that other people can possibly make some money out of all of this as well.
Definitely.
Very, very interesting. Okay, so now we did actually mention that there are some exemptions from having to do all of those. You mentioned a couple of them. Could you just sort of outline those again for me?
Exemptions would include retrospective applications. Householder developments won't need biodiversity net gain.
Oh, right. So extensions and so on won't need to worry about it.
No, and permitted development rights. So if you come to permitted development, you won't need to do the BNG.
Well, I tell you what, that is a massive, massive opportunity for you guys out there. Now, if you know me by now, you know that I absolutely love permitted development. And at Property CEO, we always talk about going for the least line of resistance. We go for the low-hanging fruit. And generally speaking, we don't at Property CEO tend to go for new build developments. Generally speaking, we like to look at commercial to residential conversions. So all of this extra layer of complexity, as I put it, is not actually required for permitted development. So when you're doing your commercial to residential conversions, you don't need to worry about that. So that, yet again, that is another huge advantage for those of you guys that are going down the permitted development route to change your commercial buildings into residential. So that's actually really quite interesting as well. But like I say, do you agree that this is just going to be adding another layer of complexity, as I put it? And could it arguably hold up the planning system even further? We have to provide, according to the government, 300,000 houses per year at the moment just to satisfy the housing supply. We're not getting anywhere near that. So do you think that this BNG, the biodiversity net gain, do you think that's going to affect the planning system? Do you think the councils have enough specialists to deal with it? What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
I definitely know it's going to affect the planners. I think we've got a broken system anyway, and this is just adding to that. It's making it more difficult. The ecologists are quite difficult to get hold of at the minute. And if we're struggling to get hold of ecologists to do these reports, the local authority must be inundated. And I don't know how many ecologists the local authorities in the planning department are employed and how they're going to be coping with it. So I think this is going to be another hold up in the planning system for us.
And it's another good reason for using permitted development, which is what Property CEO is all about, to be honest. Well, I think that's pretty good, actually. In a few short minutes, we managed to cover the basics there. It does sound complicated. There do seems to be a few loopholes that are not loopholes, but hoops anyway, that we need to jump through. But PD, permitted development, we don't need to worry about it. And with small scale development, then it's certainly a lot easier. And then the big boys, the big volume house builders, well, they've probably been dealing with BNG for quite a while anyway. So that's really interesting. Okay, well, lovely. So that's sort of looked at very briefly all about BNG and what you can.
I think we've just touched the surface of BNG. That it's pretty complicated, and I don't claim to be an expert on this. Like, this is massive subject, and there's going to be so many issues with it and ways around it that somebody really will have to invest into this or look into it if they're going to go down this road.
It's like with most things with planning, it's constantly evolving, isn't it?
Yeah,
constantly
massively.
evolving. On the one hand, we want a green planet, and on the other hand, we need housing for everybody. And it's really just a very careful balance of the two, isn't it?
Correct.
So, okay. Well, like I say, that's a little brief look at BNG. The other topic that we were going to talk about today is principal designer roles. Now, I have to say, I'm a planning consultant, but I'm not quite sure what all of that means. So, can you explain what principal designer roles is and why it's important?
Okay, so principal designer, there's going to be two principal designers now, Colin. So you're going to have a principal designer for health and safety under CDM. And from April the 6th of this year, you need a principal designer for building regs. So
you need two principal designers now.
yeah, can be the same person. Ultimately, principal designer for health and safety can be anyone as a client who the client feels competent to do that role. So it could be your project manager, it could be the contractor, could be your architect. That entirely up to you. The key thing there is that you have a paper trail of who's appointed your principal designer. If you don't have a paper trail, HSC will see you as the principal designer. You'll be the one ended up being prosecuted. God forbid there's a fatality on a site.
Yeah, so HSC is the Health and Safety Executive, and they're really like the construction industry's police force, aren't they?
Correct.
So we shouldn't be messing around with those. So now, in essence, we need two designers now, but that's really good news for you architects, though, isn't it? I mean, some of the architectural roles are arguably have been a bit dumbed down, and this very much brings you guys much more to the forefront now. You know, you as a profession are going to be needed more than ever, and now you can be involved from the very, very beginning of your projects right the way through to completion, can't you?
Yeah.
So I think that's from your point of view. I think it's a great thing. Maybe from the small scale guys that provide simple drawings and so on for let's say domestic extensions and things like that. We have people they call them architectural technologists and so on. I'm presuming that the role of principal designer will fall on them as well. So, you know,
So for health and safety, HSC, any domestic project, straight away the professional appointed is deemed responsible to take over a lay person's role. As a professional, as a developer client, you get that choice of who you want to appoint. However, although it's one title, there's two separate roles. The principal designer for the building regs has to be a competent person submitting and coordinating the building control application. And that will fall on to a professional in the design team. So it makes sense for the architect to do that. Traditionally, we coordinate everyone's drawings, but it doesn't have to be the architect to coordinate the structural engineers, the mechanical, electrical drawings, and the architectural stuff. And that's the new one. The key one is the principal designer for the building reg stage.
right, for the building regs, as you say. So can the contractor be principal designer?
So contractor can become principal designer under CDM for health and safety,
Yeah.
but the contractor can't become principal designer for the building reg stage. And this comes down to accountability and competency.
Right. So this has actually got a very serious implications. Like I say, this is we on Open Door, we're talking more about small scale property development, and also we do touch on domestic extensions. People that are doing HMOs, for example, might want to be putting extensions on their HMOs and that sort of thing. So you don't normally have to involve a high level architect in that sort of thing. It's normally done by a role for, like I say, an architectural technologist. But the bit I'm getting to is that this will actually affect things like professional indemnity insurance, wouldn't it?
Massively, yes.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
a big implication there, you know. So if you guys are out there and you're contemplating doing some proper building work, extensions even, okay, then make sure that whoever's doing your initial designs does have their professional indemnity insurance. That's very, very important. And then, of course, if you're doing slightly bigger things, like we're doing your commercial to residential conversions, for example, then obviously you're going to be needing to use somebody like Mike, who's got a proper architectural practice and, of course, have all the right insurances in place. Okay, is there anything else you want to add to that, Mike, about your principal designer roles?
No, ultimately the RIBA has started an accreditation scheme, which is very new. I don't know how many people are signing up to it. You've got to be practicing for 5 years to be registered via the RIBA. And that's only for the health and safety aspect, not the building reg stage at this stage, because it is still very new.
Yeah. Bit like BNG, that's also very new as well. So
very evolving, yes.
Very involving. Yeah, it's getting a little bit more complicated than it was when I first started, that's for sure. Probably it's high time that I thought about retiring. What do you think? get away from all the paperwork. But it's been very, 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 very useful. Well, Mike, look, we're going to put a link in the chat there. Okay, not in the chat, in the comments, so that any of the viewers here can actually get in contact with you. Okay, I'm sure that you'll be there to help people who are needing BNG and principal designer advice. And of course, you're an integral part of Property CEO. So I want to say thank you very much today for coming over. And just to wrap up now, I have to say that Property CEO do offer a free half-day workshop, and they call their workshop the 6-Figure Roadmap. And all you have to do is email us at support@propertyceo.co.uk. And again, there'll be a link in the description below. Okay, and there you are. Well, that's it for this edition of Open Door. Mike, thank you ever so much, and I think I'll be seeing you again in our CEO capacities next week, won't we? But that's brilliant. Thanks ever such a lot, Mike, and it's been great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, Colin.
Okay, bye for now.
Cheers.